I'll start off that way, it makes it easier on him. I just want to say, Leo came to Tucker and I a year ago, right? A year ago, with an idea, and which was to take care of our neglected cemeteries. We'll call them neglected cemeteries because there's actually a grant from the state neglected cemetery grant that we can achieve. Tom Stadler was the first one to get that, so you can write that down too. He got $2,000 last year. We were able to get $5,000. That's the maximum you can get. But he came with a great idea, and the fact that budgets every year are very, very tight for us. Kathleen will attest to that. John will attest to that. So when an individual, especially at that point in time, Horizon Junior, comes in and says, "Hey, I've got an idea," we're going to jump on it because we know that it's going to get some traction. It's something that I tried to do 5-7 years ago when I first came into office, was to start taking care of these cemeteries, and it was such a heavy lift I couldn't do it. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't get everyone together, get everybody at the table for one meeting, and then it all fell apart. So I was really appreciative that Leo came in and came up with this idea, and then at that point in time, we set out the course of action for him, and then stood back and then just watched, which was really kind of cool to see. We said, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to go to Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Town Council, you got to do the exact same thing that I got to do every budget year. You get to do all this, and then let's see how it plays out. And it played out very, very successfully for us and for the department and for the town. So, have that.
Okay. This is the slide where I usually introduce myself, but I've had such a wonderful introduction that I don't know if that's necessary. I'm Leo Patel. I'm going to be a senior at New Canaan High School, and we're here to discuss the maintenance and restoration of all 12 public cemeteries across the country.
Next.
Okay, so the problem is a lot of these cemeteries, as shown by this photo, have turned into jungles with massive overgrowth, fallen trees, and broken gravestones. All of this disrespects not only the founders of our town, but also the veterans who have given the ultimate sacrifice to our nation, ranging all the way back to the French and Indian War, to fighting for our freedom. It also reflects badly on our town, as having cemeteries that look like this isn't exactly a great look for a town like New Canaan, which looks so beautiful thanks to the work of Mr. Mann and the Public Works Department. It became apparent there was an obvious lack of funding for the restoration of these cemeteries, as even with a lot of volunteers trying and everyone, it's really hard to get that much momentum and speed on this if you're not organized and working with the great people of New Canaan. Okay, the scope of the problem. This shows 7 of the 12 public cemeteries, this map. The cemeteries with recent burials are better maintained, as there may be relatives or people who know someone who's buried in them. But the ones that may have graves ranging back to the French and Indian War probably don't have people who know who they are, or ancestors caring for these cemeteries. And the budget for last year of $7,600 was insufficient for the appropriate maintenance of this project. Okay, well, I would like to commend all the volunteers who have done work, but having volunteers cut grass in all 12 cemeteries is unsustainable. For example, a woman by the name of Kristen Pace made it her 2020 COVID project to restore the Canoe Hill graveyard. But then after that, she had to move to London, and she did such amazing work. The cemetery was all clean. I live right near the Canoe Hill Cemetery. Every day I would walk by and wonder, who's this woman who took on this crazy project cutting grass in a cemetery? And then I volunteered in 2021 to cut the grass and clean up the cemetery. But when I got there, the grass was growing above my head, and I was cutting it with a little push mower, so not a great. And I'm also a student, so having me maintain a public cemetery is unsustainable. This picture is what it looked like right when I got there, completely overgrown with grass and bushes and everything. This is why we needed a municipal budgeted solution that would keep this going long after I graduate New Canaan High School. And it's no different than having the grass cut right here outside of in Waveman. So what is being done? We're currently I'm working with Mr. Mann at the Public Works Department and the organization for the restoration and maintenance of all public cemeteries. First, it needs to be restoration. This isn't just physical restoration like fixing stone walls and headstones, but this is also clearing the 3-foot tall thicket in some of these cemeteries, cutting the grass, doing necessary tree work. And after that, the maintenance can occur, which is keeping the grass maintained and keeping these cemeteries as places of honor and not jungles. And this is funded annually for the foreseeable future. Our first example is the Canoe Hill Cemetery, which we are going to do brush clearing, and then we're going to be resetting, repairing, and cleaning headstones, and also fixing broken or fallen stone walls. I kind of forgot to put this on my script, but we want to work with members of the community who are willing to do work helping to clean the gravestones, which is very labor intensive but very rewarding, seeing these people be remembered again. People who may have been buried there 200-300 years ago, no one's even said their name in 150-200 years. Cleaning their cemeteries, cleaning their headstones. I will try and get something more organized. This is where I would like to call in the community to help fix the public cemeteries around town. And then our second example is the Frogtown and Weed Street Cemetery. Here, where I went there, the grass was growing 3 feet tall of thick bushes and thicket. So we're going to be clearing that, repairing the entrance gate. And this is an example of what we would be doing on a gravestone. This gravestone's leaning over, being supported by another gravestone. So we're going to be resetting them, repairing broken ones, and making sure that the lives of the people buried there are honored. Yes?
So for this cemetery and Canoe Hill, how much information do you have about the people who are buried there? Are the records available? Are they complete?
I have more information about the veterans buried there because thank you to our local VFW post. They have detailed. It's kind of amazing. They have detailed records of every single veteran who's buried there, down to the rank and when they served and what wars they served in. But the people, some of the general people, the civilians buried there, I don't have as much info, but the veterans who make up a large portion of some of these cemeteries, I have incredibly detailed records.
Jim, are you thinking the Historical Society development?
Yeah.
Well, I actually was thinking about that a few minutes ago, but I was just curious to know when one goes about
Yeah.
repairing a headstone, if it's not legible,
Yeah.
or if it's in the wrong place, is there some record that shows that actually that body is resting here?
I think
or-
there are some records, but that's something we would have to reach out to. I think the Historical Society is a great idea.
In that part?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, historical cemeteries, historical society, that's pretty obvious partnership right there. Thank you for that idea. And yeah, so that's the bulk of my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd like to take them.
What started you on this?
My brother joined the Navy right after he graduated in the class of 2023. So then walking through these gravestones, seeing those small American flags placed next to the veteran gravestones, hidden by 3-foot tall grasses, that made an incredible impact. And my grandfather also served, and so it completely changed my perspective on veteran gravestones, as these gravestones, they're no different than if my brother were to be buried there, if he were to get hurt and die in line, and that it just struck a chord with me and was impactful.
For you.
Yeah, up on Barnegat Road, just off Onoke, there's a chapel and a cemetery there.
Yeah.
That cemetery is beautifully kept
Yeah,
up.
I know. I think
because it had a very substantial endowment,
Yeah.
which has caused the chapel to be kept up, and the cemetery. But I was asked a few years ago, what did I sort of suggest could happen to the fact that it actually had more money than it needed to be able to take care of its cemetery. So I don't know where that money's gone, but
Yeah.
wherever it goes, I mean, maybe that very successful cemetery can actually help to fund some of the other activities you're doing with other cemeteries.
I agree. I think that's the Selig Cemetery. It's
Yes,
a
that's
beautiful
right.
cemetery. Walking through there feels like I'm in
Selig Chapel, right.
Yeah, chapel with the gardens,
Yeah,
trees.
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's kind of what we want to achieve in a lot of the other ones. If we can get a hold of the people who, and maybe even get a hold of some of that money, that can help with some of the initial repairs. And I think in addition to the money that the town council and board of finance have.
Yeah, because I think the state has some influence
Yeah.
over what happens to money for cemeteries. And so I would think if it went to other cemeteries, you know, the state would say, well, that's a satisfactory use. But there was a question of it going to the Historical Society, but then the Historical Society may apply the funds to other activities that the Historical Society is involved in. So anyway, I just, you know, it's nice to hear where there's some money to help.
That's awesome.
You had showed a slide that showed the location of 7 cemeteries, but
Yeah.
you said there were 12.
Yeah.
How did you find out about 12 and where they were?
That's where Mr. Mann helped me because he has more detailed records. In total, across town, there are a total of 42 cemeteries, but most of them are either incredibly small or private. And the private cemeteries, they're either on people's land, taken care of, or they're not in the jurisdiction of the town. But we're focusing on the 12 ones, which I've pulled from town records and also from the VFW's records on where they are and the location.
And the 12 are accessible to the public.
Yeah.
So some are, to Leo's point, are private, you know, they're on private property, or they're just inaccessible. One's even in Danstown, right? So it's in the water, so you can't necessarily get to that one either. But so the 12 were ones that we could actually access, or the public could access. So those are the ones that we focused on first.
So do you have a list of those 12 and where they are?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have,
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Yeah, we have a detailed map that was prepared before. Well, that map there, you can't really see it there, but there's a more detailed map that actually has the listing of the it's all numbered and listing of cemeteries. I can provide it to the Rotary, and then they can send it around us, you know. and then we
It's a
go
great
from there.
map. It really helped me when I was going around cataloging these cemeteries, pulling, like counting gravestones, going with all these records.
And to Leo's point, so when he came to the boards now, so it was a very tight budget season. We were asked to stay under 3%, you know. We were under 3%, so I don't have to give myself credit. Even with that, but they were, the town fathers were in favor of a $25,000 being spent on neglected cemeteries from our operating side, and then they set aside $25,000 annually, well, hopefully annually on our capital side. So that'll be a recurring capital expense and a recurring maintenance expense and operating expense. Prior to that, we were piecing it together as far as I was grabbing money from our tree service budget if I needed to take a tree down or do some tree work. I was taking some money from our parks budget for, you know, because it's technically a park, taking some from my administration budget. I was kind of piecing it all together every year to try to make it all work. And now he codified it, put it in front of everyone and said, yeah, this is what we should, you know, we should do this initiative, which was fantastic because they're not always necessarily looking at new initiatives for us, they're actually looking for us to what services we can cut, right? So not anything new, and we try very hard not to cut any services and keep, you know, costs down, but this is one that I felt strongly about myself, and I was very glad that he came about and felt as strongly, if not more so, and then was able to bring it forward, so.
I may be slow in here, but I'm a little confused. So at this point, you're saying there's about a $25,000 budget that the town has
Yeah.
committed?
Yes.
And then in terms of manpower or womanpower, is that your staff?
That's not my staff, no, this is out and above and beyond, so
Okay.
like the work that Leo just detailed would likely be outside contractors. So that
Okay.
25,000 would go to outside contractors, and then I still have my budgets that I can then, you know, and they were in favor of spending about $25,000 of my budget towards that. So again, same thing, tree service, I'll take your tree service budget, things of that nature. I'll actually be going to the Board of Selectmen on Tuesday for a contract with the contractor that we had before to maintain the cemeteries that we had as of last year. That budget was $7,650. We're actually asking for $15,000 and approval from the Board of Selectmen for $15,000 worth of maintenance work. And then we have an additional about $10,000 we'll see as to what needs to be done as to when we get into each cemetery. And then we still have this $25,000 capital allotment for stone walls, headstones, gate repair, fencing repair, things of that nature that are a little bit beyond the pale of an operational side, but more on the capital side for the long-term benefit of the cemetery itself.
How does Darien handle it, and is Darien more typical, or is New Canaan typical? You said that Darien handles it within their municipal budget.
Yeah, Darien has a budget line, but as for many things, it's not as good as New Canaan's. It's not as
Go Red!
But yeah, they have this. I actually modeled ours after that, having a detailed budget line on that. They have their own budget, but I think I'm not an expert on their cemeteries, but I tried to incorporate not only the maintenance, but also the restoration, so we can get these back into the condition that they were.
A neglected cemetery becomes responsibility of the municipality. It's one of the reasons why the state came up with this neglected cemetery fund, this grant fund. So to your point, John, it's across the board. If I ask my brethren across the board, some have line items, some don't. Some just fall underneath the auspices of their parks department, so it's a grounds situation, so they'll take care of it underneath the grounds. We were, on the highway department, was taking care of, we had 7 cemeteries that we were taking care of, but we were only taking care of them right before Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, right? So we would go out there and kind of cut the grass during those times to make sure that, before Memorial Day, they were spruced up, but not an ongoing maintenance. And some of the ones that were a little bit more inaccessible, specifically like the Frogtown one, which is really hard, that fell to volunteers. We had several Boy Scout groups go in and spend a week or more in there cutting things, and then all we would do is go in and bring the brush out. So we would take all the brush and haul it away for them, but we were reliant upon other service organizations to help us, and it's not a long-term solution. The better solution is to actually handle it in a situation we are in. So now we have, we'll be looking to have a dedicated line for cemetery maintenance. We have a dedicated line for cemetery maintenance on the capital side. We'll have a dedicated line on the operating side, and then we can draw those funds. Similar to what we did at Bristow, we spent $500,000 in Bristow over 4 years, making it as beautiful as it is now. And then we were able to get $12,000 of line items specifically in the Parks Department budget, specifically for Bristow, so that we can so Bristow doesn't fall back into disrepair. We have monies available, not only the park staff, but then monies available for other things.
You in the back here.
Well, congratulations on accomplishing what you have done. I actually was at that meeting about 6 years ago that Tiger mentioned at Town Hall.
You were, that's right, that's right.
I remember that. I don't know how many people were around the table, but it was probably a dozen people. And this is a testament to show what one person with energy and enthusiasm and passion on a subject can get done, because there were a dozen people that knew parts of what was going on in town, but there was not a clear leader of the effort, and it never got any steam. And like Tiger said, there were random, like one cemetery was being cared for by a group of neighbors nearby, and they kind of had a coordinated neighborhood effort to keep it clean and mowed and stuff. And there were some Boy Scout troops or Girl Scout troops that would intermittently clean up other places. But this has been on the radar screen of a bunch of people in town. And since Meg is here from the Community Foundation, not to throw another thing on her plate, but one of the impetus for that meeting about 5 or 6 years ago was there was a trust fund in one family that was based out of Texas, I think, and it was charged with caring for one of the cemeteries in town. And the financial managers that were managing that small fund really were out of sight. They didn't know what to do with the money or how to disperse it. So an effort happened, and we got it transferred to the Canaan Community Foundation. So is that Selleck?
Or Chrissy Sealer.
Yeah.
So Chris, yeah. So there was a fund at the Community Foundation for the specific benefit of one cemetery in town.
Right.
And a thought back then was to potentially develop a fund at the Community Foundation that could perpetuate the capital needs of all these cemeteries. And just throwing out rough numbers, if you take 12 cemeteries and Tiger says an educated guess at capital maintenance of these cemeteries is like $25,000 a year, if you invested that consistently, you could keep them up to a good standard. That means you'd have to have a fund of about $500,000 to spin off 5% a year to fund the perpetual maintenance. So that's potentially a community goal. There might be some folks in town that are willing to put some philanthropy behind keeping up our history, and maybe something through the historical society. Or I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not raising my hand to volunteer to do it, but it's a great goal. And I'm saying because we're fortunate to have you here in town doing this, but you're going to be a senior at high school, and in another year you'll be moving on. So I'd love to see this carried on, and there's some good people helping, but hopefully you set the structure and the foundation to see it continue. Good luck.
Yeah, that was the Christie Seeley Cemetery.
Yeah,
I'm speaking of.
Christie, yep.
That's on the corner of Old Studio Road and Old Stanford Road. So as you're heading out of town or going towards back down to the high school, it's on your right-hand side. And it's actually very well maintained. We take about $1,500 a year out of that. With the community foundation, we hire a contractor, and he goes in and he makes sure he cleans it up, he takes care of it, does the tree maintenance, cleans the lawn, mows the lawn, does the spring and fall cleanup, and then some headstone repair. And he's been doing it now for several years, and he's kind of taken ownership of it too. So he actually goes and goes a little bit above and beyond, So even though we're paying him, we're not paying him as much as the effort is. So which we're happy with. He lives in town. He's a local guy. He grew up here. He went to New Canaan High School, and he kind of has adopted that, which is kind of nice. But to your point, if we had that type of endowment, you're speaking about the one up at Barnegat, exact same thing. When they have an endowment, they can be well maintained. So this is a good path that we're on, I believe.
Yeah, just to comment on what Leo just said on that question. So I was going through my head as you were just before you spoke to build on that CD fund. I mean, if you look at, we were talking today about Bristow and the success of the fundraising through the Friends of Bristow Fund and the Community Foundation has been really helpful in terms of supplementing the town's budget to provide funding. I mean, the public works have done the labor, but provide funding has been a very successful public-private partnership in terms of raising funds so the community came through, and maybe one could build on that here with the cemetery, I think. So, I mean, just a question out of curiosity. I mean, are any of these cemeteries still used in terms of recent burials? And if not, I mean, what sort of period from when to when were these cemeteries used? I mean, I've been in a few of them. It's a lot of people from 1700s, you see, or headstones, should I say, the ones you can read. But the 12, when were they last? Up to what time were they used historically?
And is there any room for Rob?
Yeah.
That's what he's asking.
It's a loaded question because some of the cemeteries I've walked through, I wouldn't think there would be, but there are people with reasonably recent burials. And there have been talk through research when I've talked to people maybe opening these up, but I don't know what the rules are, how you reopen a cemetery. But the oldest gravestone I've seen are from the French and Indian War and from the Revolution. So beyond that, I don't, it's kind of from there to, it depends on the cemetery. Some of them stopped around World War II, some of them even stopped around Vietnam, so.
There's hope for us yet, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe people from Desert Storm can,
Those guys.
So, Leo, as you restore these cemeteries, is there a way to keep track of who's buried there? Maybe when they served in the French and Indian War, or would that be somebody else would do that?
That's where the VFW records that I have, some of the most detailed records I've seen for this old stuff. They have the rank, where they were born, where they served. I can try and send that around so that people can look at them. It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
And for in terms of records, that's the best records we have about the people buried there. And then maybe you can take the dates around when people are buried there, and then extrapolate that, see when other people are buried and when the last person is.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, because I've always felt in New Canaan that if you wanted to get people to pay attention to something, you just say, Darien is doing a better job of it than we are.
That's true.
Don't give away our secrets, Keith.
How many people are in, you said 12 cemeteries, and I'm trying to imagine, are some of them as few as 10 graves? Is the average one 100 graves?
There are some of the bigger ones, it doesn't seem like it, but these graves don't take up as much space as you would think. Like there was a few of them that have 200, 250. Some of them are as small as, like the Chrissy Seeley, that's no bigger than this room, that has maybe 30 people buried there, but their range, especially like Parade Hill, Canoe Hill, Frogtown, those are very big cemeteries. And
There's still room, John.
yeah. Okay, well, before I end, I just want to say a few thank yous to everyone, not only the Rotary Club who has invited me to speak here, but everyone throughout town who has helped me on this project, whether it's Mr. Mann and Tucker Murphy of the First Selectman's Office, and Deona Carlson, the First Selectman, the Daughters of the American Revolution, the National Charity League, and the VFW who have helped me with records and cataloging cemeteries. To continue the praise of Mr. Dinan from the New Canaanite, he's given me the platform to write my articles, gain the publicity of the town, and then all the members of the community who have stepped up, helped me survey these cemeteries, catalog them, and yeah.
I have one more suggestion, since they weren't mentioned, but the New Canaan Land Trust.
Yeah.
New Canaan Land Trust was started in 1967 and has probably 60 pieces of land. Unlike the Historical Society, which has folders on most of the houses, structures, and they add from time to time material on a house, the Land Trust has undertaken to survey the condition of each of their 60 pieces of undeveloped land. At the end of your exercise of surveying the condition of all this, it might be appropriate to ask them if they would also hold a record and include it in their ongoing surveys. Since they're already surveying from time to time and reporting on the condition of the 60, it wouldn't be too much of a lift to ask them to add another 12 or even 40, because they're in the business of surveying undeveloped land. So it's just and Rob here, since is a board member, and clearly he's interested in the cemeteries.
I definitely have notes. I'll pass them on to Rob and other people from the Land Trust about the condition of the cemeteries. And I don't do detailed surveying, but I definitely think having this land surveyed, given how important it is to the history of our town, having it surveyed would definitely be beneficial.